Hello, everyone. So I'm going to take it from a completely different angle, the topic of migration. We tend to look at the topic as a topic of problems, and I'm going to try to show you how actually DHL, a German company, migration is actually the solution for some of the most critical topics that we have as a major corporation today in Germany. We are present in 220 countries and territories, so it's not only a German problem for us. I have brought some case studies for you on how it looks in other countries. And I'm hoping that exactly like you said, Julie, I can give a positive twist, because I think from the corporate environment, we'll see that there's a quite different view than what we see today in the political environment with a lot of right wing coming up. So I do have some slides. As a typical corporate, I did bring slides to give you some of the details there. Oops. And I hope, does this work here? Yeah, perfect. And I hope to not bore you too much to death. So I really like what we as a company, DHL, I don't think I have to explain what we do. We transport for you parcels back and forth, or sometimes I saw that there were lots of government officials, probably a lot of your government pouches, they're running through our sort of diplomatic pouches. But we are a company of transportation, and I like to think of us, though, as a company which really is connecting people and improving lives. We don't only transport goods in countries like Germany. We do transport goods in controversial countries, such as we were in Afghanistan present, we are present still in Myanmar, in other countries where many companies decide to leave the country. And that's something that I think for us, ultimately at the end of the day, it's all about connecting the people irrespective of what's going on with the political environment. And on the topic of migration, we see it exactly the same way. So this is just a snapshot, and do not worry, I'm not going to bore you to death with Strategy 2030 of DHL Group, but I circled in red on the corner there a core element that we've written into the strategy, because it is a topic that if we don't tackle, we will struggle over the next few years as a company, and that's the topic of evolving workforce. When we talk about evolving workforce, we're not only talking about, let's say, aging population, the war for talents, but we're also talking about the different supply and demand streams that we see on workforce in the different regions where we operate. And the reason that I'll be able to explain to you how for DHL migration is actually a solution for the future and the existence of our company going forward is precisely because the workforce is changing so much over the next expected decade. So let's look a little bit for you to understand what I'm talking about in terms of workforce. We are a company of 600,000 people. We are a people-heavy business. We are present in 220 countries and territories. So we are not only present, let's say, in recognized countries and territories, but also non-recognized countries and territories. And we really deliver everywhere. Our biggest workforce is definitely in Europe, where we have, for example, in Germany, 220,000 employees, because in Germany we do own the German postal services. So all the mailmen you see running around in the cities, they are DHL employees. But you see that we have a heavy presence in Europe, but we're present in Africa and Americas and also Asia Pacific. In terms of the women in the workforce, I'd like to say our statistic is better, but we are at 33.6%. Having said that, maybe a key caveat there, we do have a very heavy physical workforce that comes in, and so many times we tend to not be the most attractive employer for the female population. I am happy to say that on the leadership level, though, it nevertheless is a significant part of our leadership team, and therefore it's a company that I definitely call my home. And why do I call it my home? Myself, I am a migrant. I came to Germany around about 17 years ago. My family, though, is originally Taiwanese. I was born and brought up in Brazil, so that means I was a migrant in Brazil when I grew up. We moved to the US. I was a migrant to the US. And then finally we came to Germany, or I came to Germany. My family spread still all over the world. So kind of a little bit of a heavy migration story all over the place, and that's why when I did choose an employer, that was a critical element of my choice. In terms of how migration plays a role for us as DHL, when we pulled the data in order for me to prepare for today, I can say that around about 90,000 employees that we have today, actually have a citizenship that is different than the country where they're currently employed. So that means we do assume those are migrant employees. Having said that, we do believe the number is widely higher than that. And why is that? Many of the migrants actually nationalize and when they have the opportunity to gain the local passport. So we do believe that we employ more than 90,000 migrants currently in our workforce. But the picture is not a homogeneous picture. What you'll see is that you'll have Germany with a workforce of 220,000 folks that have come from 179 different countries. But you'll see then another example, which is in Qatar. We have 100% of our workforce in our Qatari operations coming from other countries. And the middle picture is Singapore, where we have around about 44% of the folks working for us in Singapore coming from different countries. And I did have to include my home country. I call Brazil my home country because that's where I went for most of my schooling in, where we do have a vastly Brazilian population that works in our workforce. So what I try to show you here is, although we're present everywhere, what this picture should have, these statistics should have shown you is that the issues that we face in each country are quite different because each country has really different challenges. And that's an appeal that I'm going to make later on because I saw that there are lots of government officials here. We need local solutions as a company in order to be able to bring the workforce. I know that we worry a lot in governments about what is the migrant population going to do in the country. We can employ them. We can ensure that they are economic actors in the countries, but we need to be able to give them visas for that. And that would be something that for us is extremely important as DHL. So to show you a little bit of our challenges, I brought one first challenge, which is that we're facing today, which is the labor development, and specifically, the very low supply of labor in general. I know politicians and the media, many times we talk about the war for talent. I want to emphasize that we don't only have an issue with a highly educated population workforce where we need to bring in white collars into the workforce. Our issues are also on the blue collars. For DHL, we talk about a vast majority of employees that are actually blue collars, and we need solutions for those. Those are usually the migrant population that really suffers quite a bit to get a job, and we are willing to employ them as long as we can get their work permits issued. And a good example of that is, if we look at Germany, we have 220,000 folks that we employ today. If you look at the German statistics and what's expected, and it depends on which statistic you look at, we're looking at a workforce that's expected to decline over the next few years from 4 to 6 million people. That is a tremendous amount. Specifically, in terms of retirement, we're looking at more than 10 million folks retiring. I actually pulled the data then for DHL and what that means for DHL in Germany, only in our German population here. And in Germany, we're looking at 20,000 employees that will be retiring over the course of the next 5 years, which means I will need to replace these 20,000 employees with employees that are willing to work for us, and they're most probably not going to be German. They're most probably going to have to be migrant workers. And that's something that's in extreme need of our company today in order to get those employees in the country. But to not make this all about Germany and really spread it out a little bit, I know that we had some more stories on the UK, but I'm going to also expand this net a little bit wider. It's not only a German problem. If you look across all the regions, and depending on which statistic, you'll get widely different numbers, but what you see is across the different regions, the gap between the growth in supply versus the growth in demand is across the board a negative gap. We do not have enough workforce for the work that we can offer, and that is the reason that we say the war for talent, it's across the board. I specifically put here the statistic not only for frontline employees, which we call the heavier labor-intensive workforce, but also for the office employees, the highly educated workforce. And I think it's a real big mistake to always think that we only have a war for talent of highly educated employees. That's something of the past. Today, we have a war for talent also for the frontline employees, or what we call the blue-collar employees as well. I do want to start showing you two examples of our company, which I'm really proud with. And I think it connects very much to the work that you're doing, Clara, and we should definitely connect to see what we can do together going forward. So it's our Germany example. So in Germany, we have a peak season. So if any of you follow Christmas practices, you're probably sending parcels or ordering things online, and that means that our peak season is pretty much December and January. It picks up again with the Chinese New Year, so we love these, let's say, holidays where people love giving each other gifts because that's when we're making money off you. But in peak season, we talk about roundabout 10,000 additional staff that we need to bring into the workforce in order to operate in Germany. That means just to get the gifts out to everyone over Christmas, we need to hire 10,000 people. That is impossible in the German workforce. We actually actively go out into neighboring countries in order to import for this peak season 10,000 employees. And we usually are looking around Spain, Poland, Uzbekistan, and we're really looking all around to find those employees that can help us get through the peak season. But the problem is not only around, let's talk about peak season, but also our long-term needs. I just showed you how the German population is reducing in size and also retiring over the next few years. So we do have a long-term need to fill in the pipeline. And the second example here is that we do today hire more than 50%, or around about 50% of our new hires are actually migrant workforce workers. And I'm really proud to say that we have the biggest refugee program. So we do have in Germany today 30,000 refugees that have been hired by DHL. Our refugees, I also try to find out, which refugees did we really bring in? And you see the different political crises in the numbers, actually. So we have, from these 30,000 refugees that we employ in Germany, around about 42% of those refugees are from Syria, 29% from Afghanistan. We did bring a huge workforce during the Afghan, exit, and so they came to work for us. And today, of course, now 24% coming from the Ukraine. It is a challenge, though, in the current political environment and the current societal environment with the fear of migrants, to integrate them. And we've had to go to extreme lengths in order to ensure that these migrants feel like they belong, that they're included, and that they're accepted in the workforce. And our issue is not only, let's say, something that comes from the goodness of our hearts, but the issue is really that if we don't manage to make those migrants feel welcomed, they will leave us, because we know that there are other companies and other countries that will definitely hire them. And so what we've done is gone to extreme lengths to actually try to integrate them. And that's been, let's say, I think our recipe for success in terms of how, these migrants can actually work in Germany for us. So what we did is, some examples of it is, language is definitely an issue. I have to say, myself not being German, that was definitely my biggest challenge in the beginning. And after doing a lot of German classes, I don't know if I told you, Julia, but I actually studied at Humboldt University and did my master's degree there. And I went through a lot of the German classes at university, I have to say. I have to say that language is a critical building block for integration of our migrant population. And we have had many courses that we actually signed our foreign employees for, but we've actually found a solution in actually developing with the government, with the German government, an in-house app for language learning of our employees so that they're actually able to interact more with the other workers in our warehouses. But the second element, and I think this was a critical one, we do operate in Germany in what we call the extreme right centers. So we are very heavily present in Eastern Europe. One of our biggest warehouses is actually in the middle of Eastern Germany. And so that tends to be a more difficult environment to integrate because there's more fear of what's going to happen to the local population. And so what we did launch is a volunteer program where our employees could volunteer to help each of those migrant employees that we hire to integrate into the workforce. there's a strong interest in there because they all are very happy that we're getting people in the warehouse so that the workload can reduce. And so we've had quite a few of these employees, and we're talking about thousands of employees in Germany that have volunteered to, let's say, be the buddy of each migrant worker that we have in order to help that person actually integrate. To not keep this as a purely German panel, but also talk about something outside, my second example, and I promise you I'm coming to the end of my presentation, is the example of Malaysia. And it's going to be interesting because many of you that come from big corporate environments probably have shared service centers in Malaysia, but we actually face a problem in our centers in Malaysia because it's a booming economy where we just don't have enough employees in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, we have what is called a strong growth market for us, where we want to be able to actually supply the needs of our customers, but we just don't have enough people locally present in order to be able to do what we're trying to sell. And so we are actually the first logistics company that reached an agreement with the Malaysian government. So this was something that was quite extraordinary locally in order to bring into Malaysia Nepalese, Bangladeshi, and Indians into the workforce, into the logistics industry. And this is something that is quite extraordinary if you think about it, because Malaysia is a market where typically European or Western companies will outsource a lot of the work to, but now they're already facing an extreme shortage of workforce, especially for the operational environment. And so we reached an agreement with the government, and with that, we have actually gone heavily into India, Bangladesh, and Nepal, and we have been hiring directly in there. And there what we do is actually quite different. So in Germany, we hire here in Germany, and once our employees come into the workforce, we do the work of trying to integrate them. The trick here, and a really extraordinary example, is that if this is an agreement where you reach with the local government, you can actually start your integration efforts before they arrive, so that they don't have a first terrible experience when they arrive at the country. And that's exactly what we did with those 3 countries. And what we did was we started pre-departure orientation programs. So I've been told to shorten my presentation. I'm going to get it done quickly. So what we did was we started in advance in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and India to train them on everything they would expect in Malaysia, so that by the time they came into Malaysia, they were actually quite more used to what to expect, and it made things much easier in terms of how to integrate. So I'll leave you with what we've learned as DHL, what's the success factor for actually positive migration, and how we believe that it is the solution to the future of most industries, especially the industries where you need a very heavy workforce in order to be able to succeed. On the one hand, there are internal factors. How do you onboard and integrate once they're in your workforce? But externally, and this is appeal to all those government folks that are around, to work together with the governments to enable us to have the right legal framework in order to be able to bring the population into the country to begin with. And with that, my final words, and this is what, if you want to take anything away with you, is, we do believe that as DHL, we do believe that diversity is critical for the company to thrive, and business growth is only possible through migration. And the only way for us to solve the migration topic, and not problem, I say specifically, is if we do find local solutions with local governments in order to be able to accelerate the process, because I do believe that that's the solution to quite a lot of growth, not only for the business, but economically speaking. Thank you very much.